is. Hey everyone, Miss Bertuman here. Today's lesson is all about using division and the associative property to test for factors. 28 equals 7 times blank. What's the unknown factor? 4. How did you find the unknown factor? Maybe you already knew your 4 facts, or perhaps you divided 28 by 7, which equals 4. How can we find if 3 is a factor of 54? One way we could do it is if we divide 54 by 3. What if we get a remainder? If there is a remainder, that means that 3 is not a factor of 54. Go ahead and pause the video here to determine if 3 is a factor of 54. You'll do this by dividing. We'll compare our work when you get back. What did you notice? The quotient of 54 divided by 3 is 18. There is no remainder, which means 3 is indeed a factor of 54. How can we determine if 2 is a factor of 54? We can divide like how we did for 3. Let's go ahead and pause again, and I'd like you to solve if 2 is a factor of 54 using division. So, is 2 a factor of 54? Yes, 54 divided by 2 is 27. Perhaps you may have even noticed that 2 is a factor without even having to divide. That's because 2 is a factor of every even number. And since 54 is an even number, 2 is indeed one of its factors. Here on the screen, you can see 3 questions. Is 3 a factor of 78? Is 4 a factor of 94? And is 3 a factor of 87? Here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to pause the video here to answer each of these questions. Remember, you can determine if each one is a factor if you divide. If there is a remainder, that means it's not a factor. I'll be here when you get back so we can compare our work. Is 3 a factor of 78? Yes. How do we know? We know because when we divide 78 divided by 3, the quotient is 26 with no remainder. Is 4 a factor of 94? No. How do we know? When we divide 94 divided by 4, the quotient is 23. There is a remainder of 2. Is 3 a factor of 87? Yes. How do we know? When we divide 87 divided by 3, the quotient is 29 and no remainder. Is 5 a factor of 54? Is it necessary to divide to figure out if 5 is a factor of 54? Note, when we count by 5s, each number ends with 5 or 0. 54 doesn't end with 0 or 5, so 5 is not a factor of 54. Is 6 a factor of 54? How do we know if 6 is a factor of 54? We know that 6 times 9 equals 54. 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, 42, 48, 54. Now, earlier we saw that 2 and 3 are both factors of 54. Let's look at a different number sentence. Is this number sentence true? To determine if this sentence is true, we can start by analyzing this first part here. We know that this part is true. Let's write it vertically so that it's very easy to see how the 6 is related to 2 times 3. Let's now move the parentheses so that the 3 associates with the 9 rather than the 2. What is 3 times 9? 27. We're now going to figure out the product of 27 times 2. 7 ones times 2, 14 ones. 2 tens times 2 plus 1 more 10 equals 5 tens. What is the product of 27 and 2? 54. So, is this number sentence true? Yes. We used associative property to show that 2 and 3 are factors of 54. Go ahead and whisper that word phrase with me. Associative property. Here we can see 2 and 3 are associated or grouped together, and then here 3 is associated or grouped with 9. We use associative property to show that both 2 and 3 are factors of 54. Let's test this method to see if it works with a number other than 54. (42) equals 6 times what? 7. Let's use associative property to see if 2 and 3 are also factors of 42. How will we rewrite 6? 2 times 3. Let's now move the parentheses to multiply 3 times 7 to associate 3 with 7 rather than with 2. Three times 7 is 21. Let's find the product of 21 times 2. Go ahead and solve this on your paper now. What is the product of 2 times 21? 42. So, is the above statement true? Yes. Let's try another. 60 is 6 times 10. On your own now, I want you to use associative property to prove that both 2 and 3 are also factors of 60. Go ahead and pause here to do this now, and then we'll compare our work afterwards. Go ahead and take a moment to compare your work with mine. Great, now we know 2 ways to test if a number is a factor of another number. We can either divide, or we can use associative property. Go ahead and multiply 6 times 12. What's the product? 72. Go ahead and pause the video here, and using either division or associative property, prove that 6 is a factor of 72 and that 2 and 3 are also factors. We'll compare afterwards. Go ahead and take a moment to compare your work with mine. Here you can see that I used both associative property and long division to show that both 2 and 3 are factors of 72. We know that 2 and 3 are factors of 72 because 6 is a factor of 72. For today's assignment, your must-do problems are here on the screen. Go ahead and set a timer or watch the clock for 10 minutes to complete these assigned problems. If you have any additional time, feel free to work through any other problems on the pages. In today's lesson, we use division and the associative property to test for factors. Excellent work today. Be sure to check in with your teacher, and we'll see you around here soon for another Eureka Math lesson. Enjoy the rest of your day.